Thanks everybody for coming. I grew up and been living in New Hampshire my entire life and got into fly fishing at a very young age, tying flies and whatnot. My first trip out to Wyoming and Montana area was in 1988, and back then I was a lot younger, couldn't afford to do very much, so really the interest in me to going fishing out west was trying to find places that were easily accessible, and you didn't have to incur the high cost of guides and all of these other things that you hear about when you go to the shows. So going out there, we went to Yellowstone Park the first time, and we had a tremendous success. And I think I skipped a year, and then shortly I went back in 90, and then pretty much I've been going back every year ever since then. Sometimes I go out twice a year. And so what I wanted to talk about tonight was fly fishing Western Wyoming, and basically doing it, on your own, kind of going over the public lands. I want to show you some of the options and whatnot. So the area I'm going to talk about tonight is right here, this part of Western Wyoming. Salt Lake City, Utah is down in here. It's easy to fly into Salt Lake. If you fly southwest, you can connect out of Manchester very easily. Chicago to Salt Lake, it's usually around $350 to $400, and you can check bags for free. It's a 4-hour ride to about this southern section. What I'm going to talk about tonight is the Wyoming Range, the Wind River Range, the Green River Valley, down through here. If anybody's familiar with Green River, Utah, that's down in here. Jackson Hole, and I'm also going to touch base on Yellowstone. So Wyoming has a program called the Cut Slam program. What it consists of are the 4 native species of cutthroat trout that live in Wyoming. And the goal here is to catch them. You can do father and daughter, father and son, all in one trip, all on one fly, all in one day. There's different ways of doing it and people go about it, or you can just do it all in whenever it takes you to do it. But the goal is to catch every one of the trout, the Yellowstone River, the Colorado Cut, the Greenback, and the Bonneville Cut in their native streams. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. The types of trout in this area are rainbow trout, brown trout, brook trout. And of course, the gray ones are the 4 that are native to Colorado. There are also lake trout and golden trout. Golden trout are from the Sierra Nevadas. Plus there's grayling, kokanee salmon in all the reservoirs. Cutthroat hybrids are basically different mixes of rainbows and cuts that made it together, and mountain whitefish. Starting out in the Wyoming Range, on the southern end of the Wyoming Range, right here, Yellowstone's up here, Salt Lake is down here, is this little area right here. It is called a tri-basin area, and in there is the Smiths Fork Creek, the Grays River, and the LaBarge Creek. Smiths Fork has the native Bonneville cuts. The LaBarge Creek has just been restored by Trout Unlimited, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the state of Montana. They've reclaimed this entire section, and I'll get into that, when they've reseeded it with the Colorado cuts. And the fine spotted Snake River cut live in the Grays River Valley. So it's a little bit more definition. There's a road that accesses in through here. It's a gravel road. It's pretty easy going. The Grays River has the fine spotted cutthroat. It's all that's in that river. It's about 45 miles long. It starts in the south and flows north up to Alpine and joins with the Snake River. This is all a dirt road, and it's very easily to travel with a rental car. So, this is what the headwaters look like. Very typical of being out west. You're going to find trout lying tight to the bank. The cutthroat like to really they're an ambush fish. They like to hide under the bushes. A lot of willow trees, a lot of broken water, a lot of moose in this area. Of course, the moose love the willow trees. You got to be careful when you're walking through the brush. Typical fish on the Grays River is about 14 inches. And as you get closer to Alpine, you're starting to pick up more water from the mountains. And of course, you got more volume. A lot of braids. A lot of times people don't realize it, but in the willow trees, the beavers dam up the old braids, and if you're willing to bushwhack it in there, the biggest fish are generally found in the beaver things. I've caught fish up to 18, 19 inches just bushwhacking it through the willows. I've also fallen in a couple of times. This is the road. I mean, it's a nice gravel road. It's all public access, very easy to get at. LaBarge Creek has the Colorado Cut in it. This is the one I mentioned, that TU. It starts up here in the Tri-Basin area, flows south through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife land, and then down into private land down through here. The piece that is fishable, really the best water, is up here. And this basically, you know, is a little bit of a historical review of what happened back in the late 1800s. The brook trout, rainbows, browns were introduced. The brook trout thrive in this environment, small mountain streams, and they hate brook trout out there. It's just sort of like in some rivers, it's a trash fish. Keep them all. They built a barrier. They hired a company to build this barrier. And that was done, I want to say, about 8 years ago. So anything south of here is, you know, browns, rainbows, and everything goes. Everything north of here through the entire watershed, all the way up into the meadows, every little spring, every little trib was totally rotenoned. Everything was killed for 2 consecutive years. They flushed out this entire valley. It's about 40 miles long of any fish that lived in that creek, and they reseeded it. They started 6 years ago with the native Colorado cuts, and this past summer they were fishing there up to 16 inches. It was phenomenal fishing. This is a cabin that you can rent. These are spotted around the country in various parts of the country from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. $40 a night. It has hot water, restrooms, showers, bunk beds. It'll sleep 8. Not the nicest place in the world, but if you don't mind a little company at night and you're willing to rough it a little bit, it's a cheap place to stay. You can go on the on the government's website, and these are spotted around. There's some in Alaska. They're all over the place. And this is the LaBarge Creek. This is, you know, again, you're walking through willows. You can see the car here is parked on the road. There's actually very easy access. A lot of nice pools. When you're from the road, you can't, you know, you look at it and say there's not even any water down there, but when you park and you start walking around, there's some really nice pools tucked into those willows. I think I took like 6 fish out of that pool. The other thing out there, you'll find a lot of open cattle country. Here's a drive that was coming through. The cowboys were wrangling up the herd and moving them to another valley while we were fishing this particular stream. They ran the herd across the bridge. There's a bridge right down here, and they were sending them up into another valley. That's that cabin again with a moose up in the background. There's a couple of moose that were up behind the cabin one evening. I walked up and took a picture of them. This was this year in July, and you have to be careful. You're at about 9,000 feet here on this part of the valley. This is the remnants of an avalanche that came down through in early June, and you can see it, you know, pretty much wiped out the trees. This was not passable, so an entire part of the valley was closed. I wouldn't recommend going up into here much before the second week of July. It's a Colorado cut, typical water. A pool like this, nothing to have a dozen fish in a pool like that. And again, I think it took us about 10 minutes to walk to this. We came down through the woods right here to get to this piece of water. I mean, they're just absolutely gorgeous. This, just so you know, this is a 6-weight rod, so not a small rod, pretty good sized fish. See some weird stuff out there. This is just one of the little feeder streams that had to be rotenoned. Wildlife, you're going to see tons of wildlife, a lot of mule deer. Smith's Fork has the Bonneville cut. This is a more of a silver-bodied side fish. And again, you have the Tri-Basin area. This flows down into the Bear Lake. Here it is right up in here. There's the road, goes through the pass, and then just comes right, road goes up through the pass right here and comes right down. You probably don't want to start fishing until you get down in here. And again, very similar water. Pretty fish. That's about 17-inch fish. This is down in the lower section once you start getting into some of where the farms are. Some of the land you can get on, some of it isn't. And one of the things about out west in Wyoming, if it's posted, pay attention because most landowners will prosecute you. There are no excuses. You can't even float down a piece of water and rub the bottom of the river with your boat in Wyoming, and you're breaking the law. So it's you got to pay attention to those. Pinedale, Wyoming is, here's the Wind River Range. The Wyoming Range is down here, and Jackson Hole's up there. Pinedale's kind of a nice town to go to. I wouldn't recommend staying in any other town in the valley. This is a high gas mining area, and all the guys get down. I mean, the town consists of 4 bars, a post office, a gas station, and that's about it, except for Pinedale. So if you go to any of the other towns, you could get in trouble. They don't like people from the east. Horse Creek is another creek. It's about 15, 20, maybe 20 minutes out of Pinedale. Awesome fishing. Here's Pinedale. This is Horse Creek, runs into the government lands. Again, very similar water. A lot of braids. Here you'll get browns, rainbows. You get pretty much everything in this creek. You know, I think one mistake a lot of people make is when they drive across a bridge like this and they do see the river, most of the rivers out there, you know, don't really look that fishy. But if you park on this bridge and walk a few minutes, all of a sudden you find some really nice undercut banks and stuff like that. I think we took a fish that was like 18 inches out of that pool. Flies out west are generally big, so it's great for people like me that can't see very well anymore. Historic DC Bar Ranch, nice ranch. This actually I think is closing. They sold the entire ranch to a family, and I haven't heard back if it's going to be open this year, but a great location. It's in the Upper Valley, really nice accommodations. A place like this, typically in the Pinedale area, is anywhere from $80 to $100 a night. That includes breakfast, a bag lunch, and dinner. And the food usually is phenomenal. It's home cooking, and they really take care of you pretty well. So it's very reasonable to go out in this part of the country. It's kind of an area that a lot of people that live here are not interested in the big bucks like they are in Jackson Hole, and it's affordable. So you can sprinkle in some camping, some of these lodges if you just want to go that route, and it's a pretty affordable trip. Another thing you can do is horseback into the winds. I like the horseback into the winds because there are tons, as you can see, of lakes. I think it's like 1,100 lakes or 1,400 lakes. It's ridiculous, and they pretty much all have some type of trout in them. This particular trip was one we took this past year in July. We were out there around the 20th. We were out for a week. Actually, we were on the trail in camp. We stayed in camp for 5 nights, and it was a 14-mile trip. We started about 10. We climbed to about 11.5 and pretty much ran right over to base camp. And then we went up to this Elbow Lake to fish for goldens. The guide who took us actually has 5 world-class golden records under his belt, and he has the largest. So he's knows the area pretty well. This is something, if you want to do this a trip like this, you do have to spend a little money, obviously. But you're not hiring guides. You're basically hiring horses, camp cooks, equipment, and the expertise and all this stuff to move you to trailhead. This particular trip, for 7 days, and it was 2 days at the ranch and 5 days on 5 nights on it. So 7 nights, 8 days was $1,600. So that's a pretty reasonable price for this type of a trip. Same trip out of Jackson Hole would be about $4,000 to $5,000. Anybody who's really enjoys trout fishing should take a trip for Goldens, especially in this part of the country. The scenery is just absolutely phenomenal. There were 6 of us on this trip, but we had 2 camp guides, a cook and a hand, and we had 8 pack mules for 6 fishermen. Horses are all well behaved. This is our camp. They, they put this up for the bugs, but we actually never used it. The deer are pretty friendly, and they're around the camp. We had 5 of them that I thought they were going to come home with us. This was the first day. We left base camp after breakfast. We left the ranch after breakfast. Did the 15 miles. It took us about 6 hours on horseback to get to the camp. And went fishing after dinner. And Summit Lake was about maybe a 10-minute walk from the camp. Nice cuts, very vivid colors, cold water. Just beautiful scenery. And then the next day, we packed and headed up to Elbow Lake for Goldens. This is our guide, Tim. We're above tree line. This is at about 11:05. This is called Echo Lake. This is the inlet. Now this is July 21st, and this is the inlet. What's happening at ice out was only about 4 days before we got here. Little marmot. They're pretty friendly up there. They'll come right up to you. My first golden could barely fit in my hand, but I had to take a picture of it. Goldens get up into this. It's amazing to see the size of the fish that get up into this creek. They very, very subtle takes. A strike indicator is, I find, the best way to fish for them, only because you have to be very stealth, and the water's clear, so you got to kind of, in some places, crawl on your hands and knees. This is a 9-weight rod, to give you an idea. That's probably a 18, 19-inch fish. You can see the lake down here, so you kind of can come right up here and fish all of this pocket water. This particular pool probably had 40 fish in it, and it was a great spot because you could actually stand up and hide behind that rock. And we were fish that were actually sitting right in here. It's interesting, Goldens come from California, from the Sierra Nevadas, and in their natural habitat, a big golden is 8 or 9 inches. A 10-inch fish is like a trophy. These fish out here were 16, 18, 20, and 24 inches. I think I'm going backwards here, is it? No, okay. In the lake, the fish are a little bit easier. They'll take streamers and stuff, so they'll come up and nip at your fly. In the stream, it's a very, very subtle take. Their egg patterns were working the best at this time of the year. This is our guide, Tim. A lot of snow. That's probably a 22-inch fish. The horseback riding, I think this guy right here is, I think he's 72, and we had another guy who was 76. So, and they rode all day. The horses are great. Pine Creek Canyon was near our camp. Really neat stream. Not a lot of big fish, but you could fish here and conceivably very easily catch 20 to 30 fish an hour, honest to God. This was, when they talk about fishing in a bathtub, this was I've never fished a place that had more fish in it than this stream. I think the biggest one we probably caught here was 13 inches, a lot of 8 and 10-inch stuff. Weather can come in out here in a hurry. Be sunny, First thing you know, you got downpour and thunderlight and thunderbolts and stuff, and then the sun comes back out. This is a hybrid. It's a golden and a cut, and you can see the golden color and the yellow tips. So what happens is the goldens fall down from the upper lakes that were fishless historically, and as soon as they fall down into the lower sections, they start to mingle with the native cuts, and then they just become extinct. So they don't live south of 10,000 feet for the most part. That's another hybrid. A spot like this might have 4 fish in it. So I'm going to talk about the Green River a little bit. The headwaters of the Green River starts here at Green River Lake and runs south through what I call the high western plains of Wyoming into a Flaming Gorge Reservoir. This is some interesting country. There's a lot of public water all up along this section right here. Warren Bridge access has tremendous access, easy to get to. Down through here is a little harder. These are typically float trips, but wade fishermen, there's a ton of water right up through here. You can see very easy to get to from Pinedale, probably a 20-minute ride. This is an area that the Fish and Game Department, TU, and a lot of the organizations worked on. They did a lot of these log jams. And basically what happened here is they increased the brown trout population in addition to the other fish, but the browns particularly, for 550 feet fish per mile from 150. That's a pretty significant amount because you got to figure the log jams are only in certain areas. So you want to fish where the log jams are. This is a very good piece of paper. It's a map to get from the Fish and Game Department. You can get it right there in Pinedale. You just walk right in. They're available like a free map at our rest areas. And this will give you all of the access spots to the river. It's basically a must-have if you go out there. It's a huge help. This is the headwaters of what's called Green Lake, Flat Top Mountain. This is actually all closed this year because of grizzlies were living in this valley. A mother and 2 cubs, and they were raising havoc with the people, so they pretty much closed this entire valley except for day use. A lot of rainbows up here, a lot of browns, pretty easy water. You can walk in, there's a road right there, so it's very easy. You can walk along the edge. It's very, very easy to get on this water. These are rafts that I had custom built for me. I actually travel with them. I have a half a dozen of them. And so a lot of times I do my own float trips. If I have 4 people, we'll get 2 cars and we'll bring 4 rafts, and we'll kind of jump on some of these rivers ourselves. But this is walking in right from the road. Nice dry fly action on this river in the afternoon. This is the river. Road's right there. I mean, there's nobody on here fishing. This is July. Scenery is always beautiful out there. As you can see, nice gravel road. Boulder Lake Lodge is Pinedale. Boulder Lake is down in here. Nice spot. I've been here a number of times. Great ranch. These are all their packed animals. They have about 130 animals. This is a seasonal building. It's only open during the summer months and into the fall hunting season. They shut it down for winter. Nice inside, very nice accommodations. And again, this is about $80 to $100 a night to stay here with 3 meals a day. Breakfast, packed lunch, and dinner. Generally, dinner you can get back at around 7:30ish at these places and still have, they'll hold the food for you if you tell them what time you're coming. And neat thing about fishing out west is the fish bite all day long. So it's unlike the east where you want to try to be out in the evening. You want to be out all day, and by 7 o'clock you're usually pretty tired. No television here. This is all on generator. It's a man-made lake, and the ranch is up here. There's also a campground up there for those of you that would like to camp or RV. The lake has a great lake trout population. Rainbows, browns. You can actually catch Lakers here with a floating line and a streamer. We're catching these right on the surface. And this is just stripping a streamer on the surface. We've never caught Lakers anyplace else but here, fishing that way. This is the nice thing about staying here is you can get up in the morning, and out of this ranch there are a lot of ponds that are available to fish for day trips. So you can leave right from the ranch. The ranch is right down there, and go out for the day. This is a place we went to. It took us about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get here on horseback. It's called Levitt Lake. We fished up in here. There's a meadow right there. We fished up in this area right here off these rocks. You can see the lake down there. This had just brook trout in it, and nice fish. I kept 3 fish here. I think these are the only 3 fish I've ever kept in Wyoming. And boy, they were pretty good too. Cross Lake is probably about 15 minutes further by horseback and is full of grayling. This was actually in June, this was about 3 years ago. And there are not a lot of big fish here. Probably the biggest would be 12 inches. But it's kind of cool. You can go here, fish it for an hour, sprinkle it in with another pond, and you can catch just a ton of grayling. So they're pretty accommodating. They'll get into this little stream here and spawn. They're also a spring spawning fish. And you can see there's a lot of fish feeding, stimpling. Ethel Lake is another lake that's accessible out of Boulder. And this is about a 3-hour ride by horseback. I went on this trip the last time brought my 2 daughters. Both of them had never been on horses before. She was terrified. And she was pretty happy, as you can see there. But just phenomenal scenery. This is the outflow of the lake. And the fire went through here about 5 years ago, and the remnants of the burn. But you can see the inflow coming in here. Then you get into this lake. This is the meadow. The cuts will actually get up into this type of water and spawn in the springtime. That's all my... And fish are just really pretty. I think the biggest fish we caught in here was probably 16 inches. Horses don't like to fall, so if you just sit on them, they do all the work. Meadow Lake, I don't have any pictures of Meadow Lake, but Meadow Lake you can drive to. It's the only lake, if I can say, in the United States that you can drive to and catch grayling in. It's 100% grayling. This is where the state of Wyoming gets their egg procurement for grayling stocking for the entire state. And the state record comes out of here. It was at 18 inches. Grayling don't generally get that big, but it's a neat place to go if you want to catch a grayling. You can get there. It's pretty easy to get to. Let me just back up here. One other place. Another place to go. I have not done this float trip. This is a float trip. Jack Dennis calls this the best trout stream in North America. This is actually he actually thinks it's better than going brown trout fishing in New Zealand. It's a very long float trip. It's probably about a 12 to 14-hour float trip. It's all private land, and the average size of the browns in here are around 18 inches. They're huge. So if you were going to do a float trip in this area, I would probably seriously consider floating this river versus any of the other rivers that are out there. And there are a couple of shops in town, an Orvis shop and a regular a non-Orvis shop that will put you on the river. The reason I went out here originally, I read when I was young that the Green River in the Seeds-Cadee National Park was like a forgotten trout river, and the biggest trout in the West lived in this river. So if you want to believe that. So I had to go there. It's kind of an interesting river. It flows through the high desert of Wyoming, and you can see all the braids here. That's all where the floodplain of the river. And you can see it's very dry. I mean, it's not uncommon to have 100 plus degree days out here and still catch fish all day long in the bright sun on dries. When you go here, you're about 40 miles from the closest store. You want to make sure you have plenty of water, lunch, or any of your other stuff, because you're not going to take a run down to the store that easily. But there are some big fish in this river. That's about a 24-inch rainbow. You can see the cottonwoods down by the river. It's very dry. It's a wildlife bird sanctuary. You'll find a lot of birds, eagles, pelicans, cranes. A lot of mosquitoes if you walk in the grass. The mosquitoes don't generally bother me, but here they'll pick you up and carry you away. Once you get on the river, a little breeze, they're all gone. But it's phenomenal dry fly water. The fish are very, very healthy, very vivid colors. Again, this is a 6-weight rod. And these fish are strong. This is all accessible. There's a road on each side. You can get a map from Seetskiddy, the park, and you can drive a rental car pretty much on all of the roads in the park. And you will pretty much have this place to yourself most days. The park only allows one guide, a licensed guide to float any section of the river in a day. So it's really well managed. It's managed for 18-inch fish or better. Flies and lures only, and you can only keep one fish here. But so there are a lot of fish in the river. Not as numerous as some of the other rivers, but there's a lot of big fish in the river. Nice brown. This is a Snake River cut, fine spotted cut. Another rainbow. A lot of spots on this particular rainbow. Another rainbow. That net's 18 inches. A lot of pronghorn in this part of the world. Oops. This thing is jumpy. Let's give you an idea of how dry it is out there. This is a cattle fence. What they do is they bring the cattle down to the water, then they put the rocks in, allow some water to come in, and they have a rock wall so the cattle can't run out into the stream, but they can come up to the edge, and this is the other side. Well, this is all down through here is just phenomenal water. There's little roads, little walkways you can walk down, and then you can actually cast right from that bank. You don't even need waders. I actually caught this cut on a dry fly, on a size 16 stonefly. He was like 26 inches. This is my wife. She's been out with me a couple times. So local wildlife. Another big fish. The wind was blowing me over. The fish was stopping me from falling over. This is the campground at the upper end of the Green River in Seetskiddy, and it has very nice outhouses. And it's a great location to camp, and it's never busy. I don't think I've ever seen more than half a dozen cars in the parking lot. And the campground is right down in here, and this is all the upper section of Seetskiddy. First time on a fishing trip. Never went again. That's my son. Yeah. It's not easy to get kids to pick up fly fishing these days. Lots of feed in this river, big crayfish. I mean, you can see why the fish really are healthy here. This is a very prolific stream. But it's very easy walking. All right, moving further north up to Snake River. I mean, this is a pretty popular area. There's a lot going on up here. This is what I call the money part of the state. And most of the places out here, I've traveled a lot of the back roads up here. One of my favorite places to fish, though, is the Swabacker's Landing. And it's very accessible. Here's the main road. The Grand Tetons are up in here. There's this dirt road that goes down. I park right over here. And you've got all of these braids that go down through here. Nobody fishes them. Everyone who goes to Jackson Hole hires a guide and floats down the river. I've never seen footprints in the dirt or anybody walking down and fishing all these braids. And it's really kind of, you know, you're fishing the braids and you're looking at the Grand Tetons. It doesn't get much better than that. I mean, it's just phenomenal country, you know. So you're out there and you're walking around and you fish the little braids here and there. And it's just, the scenery's gorgeous. And that's just the main stem. Of course, when you get to the main stem, I mean, you can wade out. This particular bank was not, you couldn't wade off the bank. But the fish are tight to the bank. So there are fish accessible on the main stem right from the bank. And that's in the main stem. You can still get out on a few pools. And typical, you know, Snake River cut, that's probably about a 16-inch fish. There is a herd of buffalo that live in the valley, and they do, and elk, and they do traverse that area, those schwabbackers. So I've never been bothered by them, but they're out there. This is Jenny Lake. Just I mean, I don't even care if I catch a fish here, you know. All right, just moving up into Yellowstone Park. I mean, I've probably been to Yellowstone Park, I don't know, a dozen times, maybe more, I don't know, a bunch of times. And some of the places that I like to fish in Yellowstone Park, I like to fish the Madison up in what is called Beaver Meadows up in this area. You can't really see it, it's probably right there. This is the Gallatin right there. So the Madison runs right through there, then runs along 20. I also like to fish the lake, and then I love to fish up in the Lamar Valley. This is absolutely phenomenal up there. This Lamar Valley and then Soda Butte. Actually, the whole valley runs down through there. Yellowstone Falls. Gibbon Meadows is a really nice spot. It's very difficult to fish here. There are a lot of fish, a lot of small fish, and there's some pretty big fish. But what happens is the first thing you're going to do is you're going to walk up to the edge of the river, and these banks, I've actually stuck my rod down inside underneath, and they go back about 4 feet. So the big fish are under the banks, and basically what you end up doing is you end up scaring them. So you almost never catch a big fish out here unless you really stealth. But there are a lot. It's a beautiful area. I fished this one day, and there was a wolf in the meadow trying to catch stuff. It's kind of cool. Typical brown trout. So mostly all browns up there, and it's probably about a 10-inch fish, 9-inch fish. Actually, you can't see it, but that was a picture of the wolf right there. I just recognized that. A lot of blowdowns, and you know, again, with brown trout, they're going to be in the gnarliest places, so you end up casting in that. You hook one, you'll go right into the branches. Oops. The Lamar Valley, I don't know if anybody has ever been to Yellowstone or fished the Lamar Valley, but this is an absolute gorgeous valley. And this is one of the first valleys that got reintroduced with wolves and the wolf packs and stuff. And I think it was the Druid population lived in here for a number of years until they got run out. But this is an interesting valley. This is all Yellowstone cuts. Up here there are no rainbows or browns. These are the famous cottonwoods that have been photographed 1 million times plus in the Lamar Valley. So the September picture. And that's what the true Yellowstone cut looks like. It's pretty nice water, very easy walking. Here's the road way back here. So my feeling is whenever I find a place to fish, I want to fish the spot that's a little bit off the road a little bit. So I'll walk through the meadow, and it usually pays off. This is my wife and my friend's wife. We were on another trip. They like going out there because they catch fish. They go fishing around here, they never catch anything. Soda Butte is absolutely a really cool spot. I love fishing this at the end of the day. It's a tributary to the Lamar. Here's the Lamar right down through here. Here's Soda Butte running into it. So, you know, when you look at it from the road, you're thinking, wow, you know, it doesn't really look that fishy. And the water's very thin. This is probably right here. If I had maybe about 10 inches of water, the fish are going to be right tight to this bank. I mean, you would literally want to float a bug within an inch of the grass to get a fish in a pool like this. And this is the full stream right here. This is it. It's not any bigger than that. And that's an 18-inch fish. And there's a lot of them. When you walk up, you'll spook them. You'll be surprised how many fish are in this creek. The reason I like to fish this is because I like the Lamar Valley so much, is the sunsets. If you get this on a day when the sun sets, you know, when you're not completely overcast, it's just some absolute gorgeous scenery that you're fishing the end of the day in, catching 16, 17, 18, 19-inch cuts. And again, right tight to the bank in that little dark line. It could be 8 inches deep. You want to fish it. I don't think this is above your ankle walking across that. It's the famous Firehole River. Everyone goes to Yellowstone. All the shops send them to the Firehole River. This is a really tough river to fish because it gets so much attention, and there's a ton of fish in this river. Most of them are small, so you don't really get a good chance at the big fish because the little fish they go after all the flies you throw on the water. One of the cool ways to catch a bigger fish here is a lot of weeds in this river. Is to get probably about a 3-inch streamer and throw it out on the weed bed and wait a minute and then strip it across the surface like a bass plug. Because what will happen is the big fish will go, they'll think it's a small trout and they'll actually go and slam it. It's kind of a little unorthodox. You're on the fire hole, you should be fishing dry flies. But if you want to catch a big fish on the fire hole, that's about the best way I've found to do it. This is upstream of the Muleshoe Bend and stuff. Scenery in Yellowstone is always great. I mean, you've got elk here. I have just hundreds of pictures of animals that I've taken while I was standing in the river fishing various streams. This is some of the above Old Faithful. These are some of the hot streams coming into the river. Madison Junction is in the park. There's a campground here. This is actually a very popular area. There's a parking lot right up on top of the hill here in the foreground. The Firehole River and the Gibbon River come together to form the Madison River, and it's called Madison Junction. If you go to Yellowstone, this is a phenomenal pool. If you go in September, I mean, if you can get into this pool, if you want to fish it, it's very easy to get at. Chances are you won't get into it, but if you can get in it, you definitely want to spend some time there. I mean, I think on this particular occasion, when I had my wife with me and another couple, that evening, I think we took 17 fish out of this pool. This was the same day before. These are all fish that are coming up. I like to fish the Madison River in September, preferably the first week of October, for a number of reasons. One is it's cheaper to go out there. There's hardly anybody in the park, so it's very easy to get around. But the most important reason is Madison River feeds Hebgen Lake in Montana, and all of these big fish are not resident fish to the river. These are all fish that are migrating up to spawn in the fall. Of course, the browns spawn in the fall, and the rainbows follow them like a steelhead would and feed on the eggs. So all of these fish, and they'll run up to 24 inches, are in this river. and they are supercharged fish. They are very strong, and they will burn line off your reel. And I think more so than a lot of other rivers I've fished. This is an area that actually originates outside of the park. It's south of Yellowstone, the town of Yellowstone. It's called Beaver Meadows, and you have to walk in here. It's about 5 miles of river. There's an upper section and a lower section. If you read Charles Brooks' books, he talks about the upper carriage pool, middle carriage pool and stuff. Those pools are up at the beginning in the park of Beaver Meadows. But if you walk down through here, this is, I love spending the entire day in this part of the park. First time I ever fished this was in 1988. And wildlife is, you never know what you're going to find or a good place to take a nap. And it's, in the meadow, it's just, again, it's all easy walking, and the river just slides from one pool to the next, and then you have cut banks and stuff, and you could actually get on one of these pools and spend a day there, because what a lot of times will be happening is fish will be swimming through. So you don't need to be moving around. You walk in, you find a pool you like, and you just spend the day on that one pool. And what happens is the fish just start swimming through the pool all day long, and you're fishing over fresh fish all day. First time I fished that part of the river, we went to the fly shop, and they were like, okay, you got to fish sinking lines, big weighted woolly buggers, and big streamers, and swinging them, and all of that. And I'm like, I don't really like that kind of fishing. So I went out and I fished the river with a dry and a dropper. I put a little size 18 Griffith's Gnat dropper. I ran it about 24 inches below my dry fly, and we just slammed fish on 5-weight rods. They fish that way out there now, but we were at the head of the curve fishing out there. And I think the point is that, fishing here in the east, we fish one way, and when you go out there, they all fish big rods, big flies, down deep, and stuff like that. And for years, that was the way they hammered the water. So I always went out there, and I didn't know how to fish that way. I didn't have a guide, so I fished the way I knew how to fish, and I had tremendous success. And the people would walk by, and they say, oh, you must be from the east, because I had a floating line and a 5-weight rod, and I had a little dry fly on my line, and they would kind of smirk, you're from the east. And I'm like, it took me a few days to figure out why, but then I realized, and I'm like, but you know what? I'm actually catching a lot of fish, and in a lot of cases, I did as well or better. So it's you don't always have to fish the way they do in the West. And pretty healthy looking fish out there. And I think you can see, by the looks of these pictures, it's all pretty easy walking. Another spot that I like to fish in Yellowstone, and the fly shops and won't tell you, is Yellowstone Lake. If you want to catch a big fish in Yellowstone Park, it's going to be in this lake. It's not going to be in any of the streams. It's going to be in this lake, so you got to fish the lake. The boats go out and troll for cuts, and this trout was illegally stocked. This lake was illegally stocked with lake trout about 15 years ago, maybe 20, they don't really know when, and the lake trout are really taking over. This particular lake is the largest lake in the United States with no dam, and it only had one species of fish in it, were Yellowstone cuts. Those fish are very important to the ecosystem of the park because they spawn in the spring, they get up into the feeder streams, especially in this back part of the lake here, not so much there, but up all this section of the park is closed till the end of July, I believe, or the 15th of July. You can't even walk back there because of the grizzlies. What happens is all the cuts come up into the tribs and they spawn, and just like the grizzlies feed in Alaska on the spawning fish, this is the first major food source for grizzlies in the park in the beginning of their year. So all of these cuts that come up into the river. So the problem now is with these lake trout are feeding exclusively on Yellowstone cuts. So the population is dwindling. So the law in place at the lake is catch and kill every single lake trout that you get. You kill it, throw it back in the lake, or do whatever you want. You kill every single one, as many as you can. You know, they might even give you a award if you catch a ton of them. But they have a boat out on the lake. They actually radio tag fish. They find out where the fish are spawning, and then they go out and they net lakers and kill them all day long. Kill as many lakers as they can catch all day long. That's what they do all the time. It's really interesting. But if you go here, the wrong device. Oops, I'm gonna go the other way. This is the old carriage road. It's sort of been washed off right here, and it's very easy to find. There's a public parking area right there. This is Google Earth. I love Google Earth. Let's look at the lake off the carriage road. If you go here in the early morning, first light, or in the last hour before dark, the cuts and the lakers cruise the shoreline. This is actually a hatch of gnats, black gnats coming off the lake. And that's a typical cut, probably about 22 inches. And it's nothing to probably get 3 or 4 of those in the evening and maybe sprinkle in a couple of lake trout in between. And you fish it right till dark. This is the carriage road right here. There's a couple other people. You might see some other people with spinning rods out there. This is in the morning. It gets deep very fast and the water is very cold. I've fished Yellowstone a lot. There's big fish in this lake. And I haven't fished this. I probably only fished this maybe 6 or 8 times, but every time I've fished it, I've caught fish. This is typical Yellowstone wildlife encounter. And it's, you know, when you see one of those, you're probably going to end up seeing, you know, one of those. This is actually a picture I took. I've seen a few close like this. Thankfully, I was in my car. This is not zoom either. This is right from my car. You know, there are grizzlies in the park, and you know, I do recommend that I travel with bear spray. You guys may know what it is, but a canister of pepper spray. I would not go any place out in that part of the country without a can of pepper spray. You can buy it you can't travel with it. They're about $35, $45 with the hoster. And basically what you want to do with this is you want to have it ready. You also want to be mentally prepared to take it out and use it. Their black bears are a problem out in that part of the country. They're beginning to become very friendly with people and associating them with food. You know, of course, if you run into a grizzly, we went into a section of the park 3 years ago, the day before we left to hike into Lewis Lake, which is about a 7-mile hike one way. We got there, they said, oh, you can't go. 2 hikers were attacked here yesterday afternoon, and what saved them was a can of grizzly spray. What happened was the guy had it in his backpack, and he got attacked by the grizzly. The grizzly bit the backpack, then he left. So then they stood up and they got out the pepper spray. The grizzly came back and they sprayed him. And they weren't really hurt very bad. They were able to hike out. But, you know, I hate to spend my money, but for $35 or $45, I've never had to use one of these, but I would not go out there without a can of pepper spray.
Does it shoot a straight stream?
It will fire, and you can go on the internet and see some demonstrations. It will fire a 35-foot cone, 30 feet wide in less than 2 seconds. So basically, before you use the product, you want to be mentally aware of wind direction. You know, you want to have it accessible because you don't want it blowing back on you. So, and a bear's, let's see if I remember this correctly, a bear's sense of smell is like 20 times more sensitive than a bloodhound. And this product is nothing more than cayenne pepper. It's just pepper, something you would eat. But it just basically will just will just give you the opportunity to get away from that bear. If more people went into the park and had encounters with bear with this, the bears would get accustomed to staying away from people. Most of the time they are, but every year people get, confronted with grizzlies in Yellowstone National Park. I've been to Alaska, I've been in the bush in the backcountry of Alaska, where they hunt them, and I know there are grizzlies around, you can hear them, but you never see them, because when they hear people, they take off. In Yellowstone, they hope they do that. In some of the parts, like Beaver Meadow, actually years ago used to be very close to the town of Yellowstone's open dump, and that actually attracted all the bears. So it wasn't that many years ago that the bears fed in open dumps in that part of the world. And because there is no hunting, and the bears are not as afraid of people as they are in other parts of the world. And now the bear population is actually moving south into the Jackson Hole, into the Pinedale area. I mentioned before that there was an area in the Green River Lakes. This year it was all shut down because of the grizzlies. The guy that we did our backpack trip with this past year, he's an elk guide. He's been into that for 28 years into the backcountry. He's never seen a grizzly. But he's like, you know what? I don't think that's going to be the case in another 5 years, because the population is growing. The wolf population is growing. The wolf kills in Wyoming are huge. They kill cattle and sheep. The state actually pays the ranchers for the cattle and sheep that the wolves kill. There are a lot of mountain lions, in the park and outside of the park. So, not a lot of accidents, but I'd hate to be the first one from New Hampshire on a fishing trip out there to come across one of those guys and not be prepared. So basically, I would recommend you buy a can of bear repellent and don't mess with the wildlife if you're out there. Bears don't really like that. The bears don't really like that when you do that. So at any rate, that's some of my presentation. If you guys have questions and stuff, looks like I'm about on schedule. Yes, in the back?
Yeah, most of the fish native, or are they stocked?
The question is, most of the fish, are they native or stocked? They have a mix of both out there. One of the things that is kind of neat is the hatcheries out there are designed primarily, I would say the 80-20 rule. 80% is designed to support the habitat. They do a lot of programs where they stock 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch fish into a lot of these streams. A lot of the mountain lakes are stocked periodically. They're on schedules, and the fish will grow in the environment. So most of the fish you're catching are going to either be wild or they're going to seem to be wild when you're catching them. When you fish around here on the east, you go to a river, and all of a sudden, if you have a good day, the fish all sort of look alike and they're all about the same size. You're not going to run into that out in the west. Fish are going to be various colorings, various size, and I find that a 10 or a 12-inch fish in a lot of cases will actually pull line off your fly reel. So, and then some of the places are not. Yellowstone Park is not stocked at all. That's completely natural. Any other questions?
Why are they so, the people, so many buckets that have come down to the river, in the water pass, or past it?
The ranchers?
Yeah.
It's just, a lot of them own thousands of acres of property, hundreds of acres of property, and they just, they don't want you on your property because some people hunt, some people don't respect their property. Maybe they just have a bad attitude. I don't know, but there are a number of reasons, and most of the time it has to do with livestock. They just don't want you messing around with the livestock and harassing them. So, hey, well, sometimes people travel around with guns and do things they shouldn't be doing either, too.
Where do you buy the spray?
You can get the spray at any of the sporting goods stores, and yeah, and if you're going to be fishing near a road, then you don't really need it. But I tend to hike in a little bit, sometimes an hour, a half an hour. I try to get off the beaten path a little bit, and I pick my spots. And you can go on Google Earth, which is really, I don't know if any of you guys have really gotten into Google Earth or using a GPS with the DeLorme. I have a DeLorme unit. I have these books are great because you can write in them. Plus, they also have a mapping software. And I bring my laptop with me when I go out, and they have a GPS handheld unit that's accurate to like 20 meters or something like that. You can download all the Google Earth imagery onto your GPS unit by grids. So when I'm floating a river or I'm walking a river that I've never been on before, I have my GPS and I can say, well, geez, if I walk around 2 more bends, I've indicated on my GPS that this should be a good pool, because if you get on Google Earth, you can actually zoom in to some of these rivers and you can see the deeper holes, the configuration of the river, so you can kind of figure out, well, this is a good spot, and you can see access to the road, so you can kind of set yourself up with a GPS on how to find that pool pretty easily. So it's a great wintertime activity, I find, is to get involved with the maps and the satellite imagery and going on the internet and researching some of this stuff. But a lot of the places that I showed you down in the Pinedale lower area, there's not a lot of information on, because quite honestly, people don't go down there and fish. That area on Seedskiddy, it's like almost no one fishes it. And even the guides, they don't go that far. They just take you to the local river down the street. So, there's a lot of cool things you can do with the mapping software and satellite imagery and tools that are available today that you can incorporate into a pretty fun trip. Yeah, back there, another question?
A lot of the areas fly fishing only or catch and release only?
Yeah, the question is fly fishing, catch and release, the quantity of areas. Most of the water, I'm going to say probably a good 50% of it has some sort of regulations. And I've never come across any that are fly fishing only. The Yellowstone Park is fly fishing only, but most of the water outside of the park is flies and lures. And they do a lot of slot limits. 1 fish above 18 inches, or 1 fish between 14 and 16, or 2 fish between 14 and 16. If you get into some of the non-government lands, some of the creeks, they'll have a 5-fish limit, they'll have a 10-fish limit on brookies, things like that. So you do need to get a license book and read the different streams and regulations. The license fees out there, just to add to that as well, it's $11 a day, if I remember correctly, and or a seasonal license. I usually get a seasonal license because I'm generally out there 10 to 14 days a year. So I end up just getting a seasonal license, and you can buy that at Walmart or any other sporting goods shops. And I want to say it's like $94 for a non-resident season license to fish out there. Yes, up front. No, I haven't fished any. The question's barbless hooks. I haven't fished anything that says barbless hooks, but I fish barbless pretty much anyway. Or, yeah, especially the streamers and the bigger flies with the big barbs, because I've actually found that the barb can penetrate the hook from, having a better bite on the fish, and then of course it comes off a lot easier.
I lose very few fish.
Yeah, the hook penetrates further because it doesn't have to go around that barb. Yeah, exactly. Any more questions? Yeah, right here.
Where do you fish in New Hampshire?
In New Hampshire, gosh, it's less and less. I actually fish a lot. Lately, I've been fishing a lot up on the Androscoggin River these past probably 10, 15 years. I float the lower section of the Andro down through Shelburne into Maine, and that actually was really good. It's been kind of dwindling. I think from a stocking point, the upper Andro gets more fish than any other river in the state. I like the Connecticut. I like it around Colebrook and down through there. There's some nice water down through there. And then, some of the ponds in the fall for brookies. Some of the rivers that I used to like to fish, the Kentucook. I never fished the southern part of the state or the coastal part of the state. I typically like to be in the mountains when I fish. But the Kentucook was always a nice river, nice hatches, and kind of fished well through most of the summer. but that has kind of dwindled as well. I think that in the state, things have dwindled more over the years, unfortunately, but at least for me. But I typically fish up north. And I don't go like Pittsburgh north. South of Pittsburgh, Colebrook and Gorham and Berlin and in that area. I try to find some odd areas to fish. I fish Maine a lot. I used to fish Vermont a lot. I don't fish Vermont very much anymore. But the White River in Vermont was always a great river. I probably haven't fished that now in 5 years.
There's a lot of nice trout in the Benedict Brook.
Yeah, I just
A
never,
lot of rookies.
I never, I mean, even as a kid, I never came south. I lived up in the Hooksett, Manchester, Concord area. I always went north, I was just, because to me, I wanted to go to the mountains. That was part of my day,
There's the Benedict Brook in one area, conservation area.
Yeah,
Fly fishing only, one fly, bobber's hook, and release.
yeah,
And that's right off of 101A, right there. Right?
sure, I know,
Right
yeah,
Merrimack.
yeah, I know where it is.
But that's only the way right here. Before that, you go down there and you get a dozen brook trout with no trouble at all.
Yeah,
Nice trouble.
yeah.
They're still there.
Yeah, there are a few places around in the, the Sauhegan, I guess, some of the upper reaches of Sauhegan. The Sugar River up towards Newport has always been pretty good.
Never got anything decent out of the Swift River, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, that's all put and take. The winter runoff there and the ice pack in the wintertime, there aren't any, there's really not much for aquatic life in some of those bolder mountain streams. So, yeah.
Back out west, sounds like they use a lot of different type of flies and techniques, or a different type of water.
Yeah, the question is the techniques and flies out west. Yeah, there's a lot of water. I almost never use anything but a floating line. I don't like sink tips. I don't like sinking lines. What I will use if I want to, in lieu of a sink tip, I'll use a sinking leader. There's some really good sinking leaders now on the market. And if I need to get down, generally you need to get down for a nymph or something like that. We'll fish it with a dry fly or a strike indicator and a small nymph. And that way there you can get down, if you need to get down 4 or 5 feet.
What do you use for tape? Fly weight line? You need to tape it for a while?
Yeah, it depends. For usually out west, you're dealing with a lot of wind. So if I'm trying to get a distance cast, I'll go with a weight forward taper. If I'm dry fly fishing, and I'm fishing out of a tube or something like that, then you can just go with a double taper. But one of the things you have to take into consideration when you go out west is wind. The wind blows every day, and it can blow pretty hard. So you always want to make sure. I bring a 3, a 5, and a 7 weight. And if on the pack trip up into the winds, I brought a 9 weight, and this year I used a Rio, a distance taper. It was a special line that they make, and I ordered it specially. I was able into the wind to cast 90 feet. The thing with Goldens is if they're not cruising the shoreline, they're a deep water fish, so you need to get out a long ways out into the pond, then let your fly sink about 20 feet, and then a real slow retrieve. Goldens feed on plankton almost exclusively and small Goldens. So what will happen is they'll come up from the deep and they'll actually come swimming up and hit your plankton fly or a little nymph and then head back down. It's a pretty aggressive take versus when this past July when we were there, when they were cruising the shoreline. So, but those are usually what I'm fishing as a floating line. Probably exclusively. Any other questions? Out in back?
I have a question. Just want to compliment you on your photography. Do you do any writing or publishing of any of your photographs?
No, it's all just a cheap camera and, just me running up and down the bank taking a picture. Thank you very much. Yeah. How many people here have been out west of Wyoming and fished some of these areas? Yellowstone, probably. The Madison, yeah. That's where the big fish are. You know, and you know, you go to the fly shop. What do they send you? Send you to Gibbon. They send you to the Fire Hole. They send you to Madison. When were you out? When were you out in Yellowstone?
When I was 17, and all I had with me was a little red and white daredevil.
Yeah.
And I caught all the trout I wanted.
Well, you should go back. How about when were you out?
Last year,
Yeah. When? What time of the year?
I'm gonna go late in the year and fish, try to fish it back.
When were you there?
But we didn't fish the Yellowstone this time, a couple years ago.
Yep.
We were out again this year.
Yeah. What time of the year though?
Oh, it's end of October, end of August, September.
And you went. You said for grasshoppers?
Yeah.
How was it?
Great.
You fished in the park there in the Madison Meadows?
North of there,
Yeah.
where the Gallatin flows out,
Okay.
that stretch from the park up to Interstate 90.
Yep.
And the Gallatin Road.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Down in the lower section. Yeah. Did you fish up in the park at all?
Not for a couple of years, 20 people when we got there.
Yeah. You should go out the last couple days after the 27th of September to the first week of October. You take a chance to run into snow, but that's the first 2 weeks of October, the last few days of September. If you want to fish that part of the state and in the park, I mean, that's when those big fish come into that river. It's sort of like a little salmon river out in New York out there. So, and there's no one there at that time of the year. It's very few people. Who else was out? Someone down here was out in that part? No? Where were you?
Well, we were up more in Beaverhead, Big Hole, and
Oh, yeah, up in Mont.
across, through Twin Bridges and then down to.
Yeah. Yep, I've fished up through Dillon and up through Paradise Valley and up in that area through Montana and the Beaver Hole and up through Bozeman and all through there. Yeah, I don't know. I've really kind of been more into the Wyoming section. I've really kind of taken a pretty good fancy to that area, and there's nobody for the most part out in that part of the Wyoming fishing. So, any more questions? Good. Well, thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed it.